Introducing YouTube memberships, a fun way to support the channel while getting some exclusive perks. Click the join button to become a member now and get benefits like badges next to your name on videos, behind-the-scenes photos, advantages during the live trivia game, discounts on merchandise, private one-on-one video chats, the ability to request future video topics, and exclusive 8 to 10 minute videos on the history of the NFL. And now, on with our feature presentation. A while ago, I talked about this game right here, which was one of the craziest and dumbest endings in the history of the sport. You can learn more about this absolute catastrophe by clicking the card in the upper right corner. However, to make a long story short, on September 20th, 1987, in Week 2 of the season, the Cincinnati Bengals played the San Francisco 49ers at Riverfront Stadium. With 6 seconds left in the game, the Bengals had the ball and were up by 6 points. It should be impossible in this spot to lose this game. Seriously, you cannot possibly lose a game here. However, the Bengals somehow found a way, as on 4th down, instead of taking an intentional safety or throwing up a pass designed to kill the clock, they call a traditional running play, which gets stuffed. And then, the Bengals decide to leave Jerry Rice single-covered on the ensuing Hail Mary, which goes about as well as you'd expect. Game over. The 49ers go into the strike with a shocking 27-26 win, in what might be the single most disastrous 6 seconds of coaching in the history of this sport. And that is saying a lot. And don't get me wrong, that ending was strange. That ending was absolutely bizarre. That ending made no logical sense whatsoever. But what if I said that this might have not even been the craziest ending to a game in the history of the Bengals 49ers interconference rivalry? Seriously, I don't know what it is whenever these two teams play each other, but hijinks always seem to ensue under the unlikeliest of circumstances. Because when the two teams met nearly a decade later in 1996, the game ended with no one knowing what down it was. Whether you want to blame the referees for this one, for allowing something like this to happen, or you want to blame the Bengals for this one and not knowing the situation even despite the incompetence of the officiating, well, that's up to you. But it's a bizarre ending that has somewhat been forgotten about, and nearly 3 decades later, deserves a deep dive today. Because this is the story behind one of the strangest endings to a game you're ever going to see, and one of the worst officiating blunders in NFL history. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, we need some context to understand how the game itself was going that led to the bizarre ending that you're about to see, as well as a brief understanding of the NFL rulebook and the broadcast of the game, with the latter actually playing a surprisingly big part in this if you were watching at home. It's October 20th, 1996. It's Week 8 of the NFL season, and as we're nearing the halfway point of the year, we've got an interconference battle on our hands over at 3Com Park between the Cincinnati Bengals and the San Francisco 49ers. Nobody was giving Cincy any chance of winning this game, and I truly mean that. The Bengals enter this one with an abysmal 1-5 record, having dropped their last 3 games and having not won since it was officially summertime, and they were playing a 49ers team that had won their last 6 regular season games at home, was a juggernaut every year during the first half of the 90s, and was 4-2, tied with the Carolina Panthers for the NFC West lead. The 49ers enter this one as 14.5-point favorites, and when you're favored by more than 2 touchdowns, it means that just about everyone is expecting an absolute bloodbath to unfold. Why this was the national 4 o'clock game beats me, but that's what we were dealing with here. Which is why it stunned just about everyone when midway through the second quarter, a team jumped out to a 21-0 lead. But it wasn't the 49ers. Rather, it was the underdog Bengals, who were somehow up by 3 touchdowns on this San Francisco team. There's no possible way that Cincinnati can blow this lead. They've had their fair share of struggles against San Francisco, dating back to the last time they beat them back in 1974. But this seems impossible for even a team like them to blow. And even though the Bengals couldn't score the rest of the way, they were still leading 21-14 with 3 minutes left, and the Niners pinned at their own 12-yard line, needing to drive 88 yards down the field to even tie the game. There's no way they can possibly, well, are you actually kidding me? Well, as bad as this is, you've got the ball with 2 minutes left, and the game is tied. If you told the Bengals fan that the game would be tied with 2 minutes left to the start, I'm sure they would have taken that. Worst case scenario, you're forcing over, son of a, oh my god. You're really gonna blow this. You're really gonna bungle this. Alright, you've just gotta get a stop now. And you might have oh, you've gotta be kidding me. This franchise is cursed. I'm convinced it's cursed. Every game against the 49ers is cursed. They put a hex on them. I don't know what to say. Alright, as bad as this is, and trust me, it's bad, at least you've got the ball back. At least you have a chance, however slim it is, of driving down the field and tying this game up. Buckle up, because things are about to get a bit weird. First down, and Jeff Blake completes the pass to future offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy for 7 yards. Now, it's 2nd and 3. And the good news is that this pass by Blake to tight end Tony McGee gets the Bengals into 49er territory. The bad news is that Blake was way out of the line of scrimmage when he made this throw. The original yard line was the 31-yard line, and Blake makes this throw at the 32-yard line. Wipe out the play. It's an illegal forward pass, which means a loss of 5 yards and a loss of down. Remember that. This penalty carries a loss of down. Because on 3rd down, after a screen pass picks up 5 yards, it's 4th and 2. And that's when Jeff Blake does, well, roll the tape.
Kill the clock. And 5 seconds.
That's right. He spiked the ball. On 4th down, he spiked the ball. There's a few problems with this. The first one being that obviously, this should be a turnover on downs, seeing as this was an incomplete pass on 4th down. But the second one is that the referees, quite simply, forgot to switch the down marker. Here's the still of when Blake spikes the ball, and look at what down it says. It says it's 3rd down. You see, when Blake threw the illegal forward pass, the referees lost track of the down, as just about everyone forgot that an illegal forward pass carried not just a 5-yard penalty, but carried a loss of down. Jeff Blake didn't realize it, the referees didn't realize it, and because of this, Blake spiked the ball thinking it was 3rd down, when in actuality, it was 4th down. And adding to the confusion involving this man right here, not at the stadium since you're not watching the broadcast at the stadium, but for those watching on TV, which was most of the country since this was the national game, was the fact that this was being broadcast on NBC. Why is that significant? Because by 1996, NBC was stubbornly the only network that did not have a score bug on the screen at all times. Fox created this in 1994, and it was such a universal hit, and maybe the greatest revelation in the history of football on television, that every network followed suit shortly after. That was every network except for NBC, which believed that having a score bug was stupid, that it would take up real estate on the screen, and most importantly, that people would tune out of games that were blowouts if they knew what the score was, thereby decreasing the ratings. Even though that notion is laughable, because for a game like this where it's close, wouldn't you want a score bug indicating that? But every score bug has the down and distance on it. So I say that NBC was the worst possible network to air this game because the referees had no idea what down it was, the Bengals had no idea what down it was, and the fans watching had no idea unless you were an astute observer, because it wasn't on the screen like it would have been for other networks. Heck, watch the play again and look at the reactions of the 49ers players. This is a team that just won the game, and they had no idea that they did, because it still said 3rd down when it should have been 4th. And eventually, after the officials huddled up and got together, they announced this.
On the illegal forward pass, that was a loss of down. So the down was really 4th down, so it's 1st down, San Francisco.
Ball game. Turnover on downs because Jeff Blake spiked it on 4th down, not 3rd down, and because the 2nd down play should not have been a redo, but rather was a loss of downs. And after the game, oh, you can bet that there was outrage on the part of Blake about this. Because obviously, if he had known that it was 4th down, he wouldn't have spiked the ball. He's not that stupid to spike it at the worst possible time. And he 100% blamed the referees for this, taking no responsibility for this mistake at all. Said Blake on this entire debacle, the referee said it was 2nd down after the pass to McGee, but it should have been 3rd down. So I ran another play and then killed the clock, thinking that it was 3rd down, so I'd at least have an opportunity to throw the ball into the end zone for a Hail Mary or something. It's not our fault that the referees messed up. If I had known that, the play before that, I would have downed it. Translation, the refs screwed up, and if I knew everything that I knew, I wouldn't have spiked it on 4th down, which makes sense. Now look, on one hand, you can blame the officials for this. At the end of the day, it is their job to know what down it is at all times. It is absolutely their job to know how to count to 4, to know how to enforce their own rules, and to switch the down marker after every play when applicable. A reasonable person absolutely could have given a glance to the marker to figure out what down it was, got off of that, and gone from there. If you look at a down marker and it says the number 3, you assume that it's 3rd down, and not 4th. It's almost like if you're driving a car and you look at your gas meter and it says you have half a tank. You don't expect that 1 mile later you're going to run out of fuel. Those numbers exist for a reason and serve as a guide for everyone. And when the guide is off, yeah, I can absolutely see the problem. And I can absolutely see why Blake didn't want to shoulder any of the blame, and instead wanted to put it all on the officials. On the other hand, it is extremely easy to blame Jeff Blake for this, and the Bengals for not knowing the situation at hand. It's not like this was some obscure rule, or there was an issue with the distance that the referees didn't address. This is a rule that everyone knows, especially if you play quarterback and have played the position for a while. If you throw an illegal forward pass, it's a penalty that carries a loss of down. Jeff Blake had been in the NFL since 1992, played college football at the quarterback position beginning in 1988, and presumably had been playing football for a much longer time than that, with the rule not being new and the rule not being something that changes based on the level of play that you're at. And heck, even if that was the case, let's splash back to literally 2 weeks before, October 6, 1996, Week 6 of the NFL season, an AFC Central game under the lights at Synergy Field on Sunday Night Football on TNT between the Houston Oilers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Early in the second quarter, with the Bengals down 3-0, the Bengals face 1st and 10 at Houston's 21-yard line, just outside the red zone. And while Jeff Blake throws a pass that falls incomplete, the referee rules, sure enough, that this was an illegal forward pass. Granted, I don't think this was the right call. There was no instant replay back in 1996, so whatever the call on the field was ended up sticking. But if any part of the body is behind the line when you throw the ball, it's good. And I don't see how Blake's entire body was across the 21-yard line when he threw that ball. Having said that, this penalty carried a loss of down, because that's just what happens in a spot like this. So literally 2 weeks before, an identical situation happened to him. So why did he think the enforcement of the penalty here would be any different? And if that wasn't enough, that wasn't even the only time in the last year that this happened to Jeff Blake. Let's go back to November 12, 1995. So again, not even a full year before the Bengals 49ers game. This time, the Bengals are on the road in a tied game against their AFC Central foe, the Jacksonville Jaguars. With the game tied at 7 apiece to start the third quarter off, Blake and the Bengals face 3rd and 8 on Jacksonville's 48-yard line. And what do you know? Jeff Blake throws an illegal forward pass. Unlike the Oilers game, this one looked like the right call. It seemed like Blake threw this ball at the 47, and wasn't behind the line at all when he let this ball go. But this penalty carried a loss of down, just like every other enforcement of this penalty known to man, and the Bengals were forced to punt. It's not like Blake was a first-timer to an obscure rule. This was a well-known rule that everyone knows, and that has been enforced on him multiple times in the past year. So if anyone should have known better about this rule, it's Jeff Blake. It's Jeff freaking Blake. And to blame the officials for this, when you should have known better at the start, seems like a really bad deflection of the blame, and seems unnecessary and unwarranted in many ways. Yes, the referee should have reset the down marker to indicate that it was third down, but it shouldn't have mattered in the first place. One person's mistake doesn't necessarily excuse a mistake of your own. It's almost like if you're taking a multiple choice test, and the teacher writes a question that accidentally has 2 right answers when it was not supposed to. Let's say the question was, which of the following countries won World War II? And 2 of the choices are England and the United States. Yes, both of these are correct. And the teacher made a mistake having both of these answer choices there. However, it doesn't matter, because you went and circled Germany. It doesn't matter that the teacher screwed up. Your screw-up never should have happened in the first place, and whether the teacher screwed up or not, it should not have impacted your answer. And the same thing applies here. Yes, the officiating crew may have screwed up badly by not resetting the down marker, but you should have known from the start, because you've been in the NFL for a while, you played football for a while, and this has happened to you multiple times in the last year, that this was 4th down, and you cannot spike the ball on 4th down. End of story. Amazingly enough, after the collapse in the game between these 2 teams behind me right here, where the Bengals blew a 21-0 lead, the Bengals fired head coach David Shula. Probably should have happened way before that, but he got fired after a 1-6 start to the season. You can learn more about how bad of a head coach Shula was by clicking the card in the upper right corner. This game was his swan song. And what's odd is that in the quarter century or so rivalry between the Bengals and the 49ers, where the Bengals lost every time, most of the time it was by 1 possession. It wasn't blowout games where the Niners were just dominant. It was games like this one that just had insane endings that you really couldn't believe, and that could only happen to the Bengals. Just a bizarre way to end this game, and just another part of this horrible losing streak for the Bengals against the 49ers, which included the 6-second debacle in 1987, the overtime loss in 1990, and of course, the 2 Super Bowls. Look, if everyone was on the same page, am I saying the Bengals win this game? Absolutely not. Even if everyone knew what down it was, they would have to get to the line quickly, convert the 4th down while getting out of bounds, since you're not going to have enough time to clock it over the middle of the field, and then somehow convert a Hail Mary, and then win it in overtime, or get the 2-point conversion at the end of regulation. There were a lot of things that had to happen for the Bengals to even have a remote chance at winning by this point in the contest. But the fact that it ended like this? Well, that was just insane on so many levels. Because on this October day in 1996, neither the Bengals nor the referees knew how to count to 4. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.